Alright, so here's a bunch of random really easy scrolling tricks that can help improve your times. This video contains beginner, intermediate, and advanced tips, so there should be something for everyone in this video. Alright, so the first tip is just to not regrip. So this is a very common mistake I see in a lot of beginners, is that they would always regrip the cube. I think this is a huge mistake. It lowers your TPS by quite a bit, and it's much better to have smooth solves by interchanging the R2s, and that allows you to achieve much greater TPS. The next trick is to cancel into the bar flip. So usually the bar flip is 3 slices, something like this, but actually you can cancel this into the last move of your last alg. So for example, let's say I have this edge case, so I'll just do the algorithm. Instead of doing the last move, I'm gonna go do a 6 or U2 slice, U2 slice, and that cancels into the bar flip, so I don't have to do the algorithm for it. So there's 2 ways you can cancel the bar flip. You can do it on the top or the bottom. So you can cancel on top by doing canceling into a slice, U2 slice, U2 slice, or slice, D2 slice, D2 slice. So the way I pick which side to cancel on is pretty simple. On the second to last move, look at the orientation. The one that's further from solved, you should use that one to cancel to the bar flip. Also, if you can tell that the AUF for a layer is going to be a U2 already, I would prefer to cancel the bar onto this side. And if the side is already going to be solved, I would prefer not to cancel onto this side. For example, for this one, I would definitely want to cancel on top, so there's no AUF. This next trick is really simple. It's basically just an M2. So if this case, beginner's method, you would usually do something like this. Swap these two and then swap these two again. But with this simple alg, you can solve this in 1 step and just 2 moves. So it's very simple. You just misalign 1 layer, slice, misalign both by 1, slice. Very simple and easy to execute. There are actually 2 ways to do the M2, so you can either start with the top layer turn and go like this, or you can do the reverse of it, which is starting with the bottom and then go like this. So knowing both of these M2s actually are pretty helpful for doing algs. So knowing both M2s can actually help your finger tricks for an alg with M2 in it. So for example, this W perm, I'm going to have to do an M2. So you can either do this M2, or I can go like this. Don't move the bottom layer and then do an M2 like this. Here's another example for edge. You can go like this, do the M2 like this, or you can go like this and do the M2 like this. So those are 2 ways to finger trick the edge alg. So you might know that M2, U2, M2 switches these 2 edges and these 2 edges. This same trick can be applied to square 1. So we can do this case with M2, U2, M2. And this is really helpful with eliminating bad DPs. Similarly to the bar flip, where you do the U2 actually affects the AUF or ADF. So the general rule is that if you can tell the layer is going to be solved, you should prefer not to do the U2 on that layer. But if you can tell that the layers are going to be off by 2, then you should do the D2 or the U2 on that layer. For example, for this one's off by a D2. This one is going to be solved. So we're going to do the D2 on the bottom to avoid any AUF or ADF. So here's another 3x3 application. So 3x3 H perm is going to be like this: M2 U prime, M2 U2, M2 U prime, M2. Pretty simple. Square 1, same exact thing. M2 U prime, M2 U2, M2 U prime, U2. And that solves the H perm on top. If you want to do on the bottom, just do it with the D moves. Really simple. So next is the Z perm. This one's actually really simple, even easier than the B3. So what you do is first know which direction the pieces are swapping. So it's here and here. So first you do an M2. This swap with this. So we're gonna put this in front, do our M2, go back and do an M2, and that solves the whole case. Of course you can do this on the bottom. So M2, D move, M2, opposite D move, M2. So here's another really simple one that a lot of people don't actually know. So it's going to be opposite and O perm. So first off, know where the O perm is going. So this one, as you can see, it's counterclockwise. So for the layer turns, we're gonna move it clockwise. We're gonna move it the opposite direction of these edges. So first off, as usual, hold it like this, M2, do the opposite move, which is U, M2, U, M2. You can also do this to the bottom, so M2, D, M2, D, M2. And it solves opposite O. So here's an alternative op-op swap. So what you do is slice, move them both in the same direction, both layers, do an M2, move them back, and then slice. So this basically solves the op-op on the side rather than in front. Here's another AUG for the op-op. This one flips the bar, and this one is only 3 slices instead of 4. So for this one, you go like this, hold them both in front, like this, front to back, slice, do a 5 on one layer, 1 on the other, slice, and then you solve it. So again, slice, slice, slice. Pretty simple. So using the 2 previous AUGs, you can actually solve this case, which is the double H term, very easily. So basically do the first part of the previous AUG. So it's this, go like this. But right before we do the last move, we're gonna move it like this, do an M2, and then solve it. So again, double H term on top and bottom. The first part of that AUG, and then do an M2 on the side, back. Pretty nice. So there are actually a lot of ways that I can use the M2 AUG into the EO AUGs. So for this one, got 4 edges. Pretty simple, you can just do an M2, and then just align it, M2. This case might be a bit trickier, but just need to notice that these 2 swap, and these 2 swap, to make these opposite, and these opposite, which allows for an M2. So, that, and an M2. Here's another one. This is a bit trickier as well, but all you have to do is notice that if you do an M2, that solves another edge, and you're left with 1-1. Here's another one. So you notice that just like with these, you're left with 1-1, and you just do the AUGs. When you end up actually learning the AUGs for these EO cases, you'll actually notice that a lot of them are just cancellations of EO AUGs or EP AUGs and an M2. So here's a pretty simple seal trick. Now I do use white on top and black on bottom, and now I have this black L here and this white here, white L and black. So I see a lot of beginners doing this. Basically they're trying to get as much white on top first, so 1 slice to get this, and then 2 more slices to insert that white piece. So the way you do this is you hold both whites on the left, or any color that has to be on top, and then you hold this here, connect these 2, and as you can see, it's very simple 1 slicer. So here's another CO trick, and again I use white top, black bottom. So when you're doing CO, try to preserve as many edges as you can, so that during EO you can do less work. So for example here, to solve the white, I'll do this and then this. But I notice here, if I do this, I'll break up this block, so I just switch both by 1, and now I have an easier EO case. Alright, so here's another example. So for this one, I don't want to do this, because that breaks up this block, so I'll do this to preserve the block, and then for the second one, again I don't want to do this to break up the block, rather I'll do this, and actually get a EO skip. Here's a pretty nice trick for CP, so I got this angle, and I don't see any lines or solved corners, so I don't really know where the headlights are going to be, so I'm not sure where to do the CP from. But a quick tip is, when you see opposite corners, opposite from that is the solved corners. So example, here, again, opposite corners, the opposite of that is the solved corners. So for this case, immediately I know I have an adjacent swap here, adjacent swap here. Alright, so it's a very simple trick to do the adjacent parity on bottom. So a lot of people just do this, edge, and just do it on top. And I think that's pretty efficient. So the better way to do it is, without learning the AUG for the bottom of course, is just to do 1 slice, and then do the AUG from the top. And then undo that slice. So really simple, bring these wedges up and apply the parity alg to these wedges. And then bring it back down. So this can also be applied to the opposite on bottom. So if you know the opposite alg for on top, then instead of doing this M2 U to M2 and having to do that M2, instead you can just bring these both up by just doing one M2, do the alg, and then undo the M2, and you can actually cancel it into the last move. So you might already know the edge alg from the back, but it's also really useful to know it from the front as well. So for this case, here and here, slice like this, and then do the M2, and then unslice. So again, to swap these and these. You can also mess around with this to solve other edge. So for example, for edge like this, you can go like this, here, and then do M2, and then move it back, and you can solve this one. So here's ZZ. So instead of doing like the M slice stuff, you can actually do edge, but cancelled. So since you know it from the front and the back, it becomes much easier. So I'll start from the front. Instead of doing the last move, cancel in the edge in the back. So again, that's the first one, cancel into the second one. So here's an EP I see done wrong quite a bit, so just U, Z. So some people do like Z perm and then do U perm. So what you should do is just two edge algs, so edge to solve this, and one more to solve this and this. So it's important to use both edge angles to solve this to make this more efficient. So edge in the front to do this. So make sure you're switching the opposite one with the middle one like this, and not these two, otherwise you end up with op. So edge here, do a U prime, and edge from the back. There's a lot of JJ algs out there, but I think the easiest way to learn them is to think of them as a modification of the edge alg. For example, this one. So just these two and these two. Do the same exact finishing for that, but do it with bigger turns, with 3 turns. And as you can see, you get a J perm, JJ. And also you can do this to the back, so for back, edge like this. Do it with bigger turns. And you get JJ. So it's a really easy way to memorize the JJ. And also it's very nice to know it from the front and the back, so depending on what angle you get it from, you can actually solve it. So here's a really easy CP that a lot of beginners actually try to avoid because they think of the end perm as bad. But it's actually pretty simple. It's just 3 slices. So it's kind of like Ortega, like the R2B to R2 alg or the R2F to R2. So doing the R2, you can't do B2, so we're gonna move both layers here. Do the B2, and then do the R2, move them back. So that's the NN. So again, NN on both layers is like this. Yeah. So here's a way to solve this, which is JJ with a flip bar. So of course you can do a JJ and then flip the bar, but then you have to eventually do a U2, which is not that cool. So what's better is hold it a U2 away from the position you're going to hold it from. So usually it's from here for me, for this alg, but I'm gonna hold it like this. And then I'm gonna do the beginning of the alg. When you're at the second to last move, cancel into the NN. So basically do this, and move them both back. Again, cancel to NN, and that's JJ with a flip. Pretty nice. So here's another really easy CP. So this one's just JN. So I'll just do the J on bottom and N on top first. So it's very simple. So as you can see, just alternating the slice and then doing this clockwise, counterclockwise. So kind of like a sexy move in 3x3, but let's go to 1. So for the bottom, same exact thing. So here's another fun fact actually. Depending on if you start clockwise or counterclockwise, you actually get a different AUF or ADF. So this one. But if I do this first, you can see that I get a different AUF. So another really easy trick is that if you use the correct CP AUG, such as the one in this video, you can misalign or align the layers right before the AUG, and the AUG still works. So here's an example. NN works like this, but if I choose to misalign this layer, it still works, but it changes the block alignment. Here's another example for JN. As you can see, it works from this angle. If I choose to do this, you can see that it still works perfectly fine, but it changes the block angle. So this trick is really nice when doing CP. For example, for this case, for the top, I see that the block is this way, so I'm gonna misalign the top this way, so that the CP I do preserves this block. For the bottom, I see it's this way, so I'm gonna leave it out like that, because I know it preserves this block. I'll just do this AUG. As you can see, I got 1 block, 2 blocks. Now, if I misalign both of them the opposite way, I would get a different EP with less blocks. So, in general, during CP, try to preserve as many blocks as possible using this technique of aligning and misaligning. So here's a pretty annoying EP case, which is just U-perm and H-perm. So normally you would do something weird to solve it, maybe an H-perm bottom and then edge on top, which is way too long. Here's a simple way to do it. Notice the way the U-perm goes. This one's going clockwise, so I'm gonna hold it like this aligned. Bottom doesn't matter like which alignment you have it. So from here, do JN, and then solve it with the block alignment trick, and you're solved. So here's the other one. The U-perm's going this way, so it's pretty similar. You're just gonna misalign it like this. JN, and then JN with a different angle, and the EP solved. So here's a really bad case that often comes up, and it's opposite adjacent, and this comes up quite a bit, and it's pretty annoying, especially when you align the blocks, and yes, you get the 2 blocks, but then you get this really bad EP case. So to solve this, it's pretty simple. Yes, you can do edge, but that's too much work. So for the easier way to solve this, I'll set this up into edge. So slice, U-prime slice. So it preserves this edge and sets these up next to each other. And from here, do the AUG for edge with these 2 edges and these 2. Move this back, and then undo the setup moves. So again, set these up next to each other, edge, move this back, and then undo the setup moves, and that's how you solve the up edge AUG. Here's a pretty cool trick you can do during EO. So a thing you should know is that almost every EO case, well, depending on the AUGs I use, but most of them do not affect the corners at all and just affect the edges. So knowing that information, you can actually predict CP during EO. For example, when doing this 1-1 EO case, right before I do it, I'm gonna notice that I have a adjacent swap here and adjacent swap right here. So I do the EO, and I go straight into the CP because I know the corners are right. So this trick pretty much gets rid of your pause between EO and then CP, and also it can help make your solve a lot more smooth. So here's another pretty cool trick, and again I have white top and black bottom. So I have this case, so most people would just go like, okay, I'll just do this, and then do EO. But what you should do is do the EO alg first. On the last move, cancel into the side flip. So again, do the alg. On the last move, cancel into the side flip. So this technique works with any EO alg, including the M2. So for this one, pretty simple, just do the M2. On the last move, just cancel into the side flip. When I started Cube Shape, I found it to be a very difficult concept to grasp, but here's a pretty simple trick to help you understand it better. So all I have to do is break up Cube Shape into pairs of 2. So for pairs of 2, you can have either connected ones, opposite ones, or ones that are forming an L. So just remembering this trick about the pairs of edges, it makes Cube Shapes a lot easier. For example, for this one, I can think of this one like 2 and 2, and I'm trying to make 8 in a row, so I can connect these two, and the 2 L's can turn into an opposite and a pair. So I can't put the pair up right now, but I'll put the opposite one first, and then I'll put the pair into its place to make 6 in a row. This one's pretty simple, just put the opposite next to the 6 to make 8 in a row. A pretty tricky cube shape is this one, and there's not really too many big blocks to form the 8. So first off, I'll do this, and what I'm trying to do is get this opposite to form pairs like this. So I'll hide the opposites here, I'll bring them back up here. So that creates pretty much all pairs, and that's much more friendly to deal with. After this, I need to make this something like this, like a pair. So what I can do is bring this up and insert this 2 here to make 6, and again use the opposites to form the 8. So I think if you split up the cube shape into these 3 shapes, it makes it a bit easier to get to 8 and to solve cube shape. So here's a pretty cool way to make cube shape cases like these a lot easier. So beginner method, you do this to make the 8, and then slice, you get scallop. So instead of doing that long thing to get the 8 in a row, instead you can get 4 in a row and 4 in a row, or scallop. So basically, bring things down, and you get scallop. And it makes that cube shape a lot easier. So here's another very simple cube shape case, and it's basically scallop kite. And for this one, it's pretty simple. Slice to divide it, and solve this fist. Knowing scallop kite is really nice for some cases like these. So for these cases, it's a lot harder to get into the 8 case or the scallop case. So for these, opposite down from here, scallop kite. For this one, bring these 2 down to here, scallop kite. So you can see it's pretty simple. Another cube shape case that a lot of people don't actually know is shield. This one's actually really nice. So instead of reducing it to the 8 case or the scallop case, you can just do this. So one slice to barrel. So put these across from each other, and put these across from each other, and yeah. So I think the best example of this case is shown through this case. So usually people would go like this and then this to scallop. But the better way to do this is one slice into shield. So another very useful case is the pawn cases. So for this one, split in half and get fist. This one's also pretty similar. Split in half, fist. So here are 3 cases I see common mistakes with. So all these use pawn. So for this one, just bring this down, and you have pawn. This one, also just bring these wedges down, connect with the opposite, and then pawn. For this one, just break it up in half, and then you get pawn. Another easy case is square mushroom, or muffin, whatever you want to call it. And for this one, so just hold it like this, one slice into fist. So again, so an interesting application of this alg is with this case. So it's kind of an awkward shape here and then opposite here. What you can do is maneuver this around to here to form a square, and to bring these two up. So for example, here, slice, slice to make the square, and you get mushroom square. So again, for this case, it's not that intuitive, but it's pretty nice. Here's mushroom mushroom, or muffin muffin, and this one I see done incorrectly quite a few times. So some people like slice here and then get this case to make scallop or something, but you should find the optimal case that makes barrel barrel. So for here, just hold the edges in front together like this, connect the opposites, and then you get barrel barrel. So again, you want to hold the two together in the front, also in the back, and you want to connect the opposites with one slice, and then you get barrel barrel. Here's a pretty nice one. This is shield and then square. For this one, it's pretty similar to square and mushroom, but for this one, slice here and fist fist. So again, slice, fist fist. A cool use of the shield square alg is solving shield kite. So for this one, you just want to hide the shield edges and put them on the bottom, and then mess around with these edges so that you turn the kite into a square while preserving the four edges from the shield, and then you can do square shield. With that knowledge, you can actually solve this case, which is bad fist fist. So for this one, you obviously can't really dissolve it into slices. It's just not possible. And for this one, all I have to do is turn it into shield kite, turn that into shield square, and then you solve it from there. That leads to the final TSP case, which is kite square. People would just do this and then be confused, and then do this and then be confused. But the way you should solve this is something like this: square in bottom, kite in top, and you get one slice into bad fist fist, one slice into kite shield, two more slices into square shield, and then you solve it. A cool way to remember this is you're kind of moving the top layer back and forth. So just pay attention to the top layer's movement. It's kind of like back and forth. Towards the end, it just goes one direction. Another cool thing about this alg is it's 2gen, so you can actually do this really quickly. So here are two cube shapes that I see done wrong quite a bit. Versus this one, you might be tempted to do scallop kite, see this big block, but just do one slice into shield square. This one as well, you can see this big block, you might be tempted to do scallop kite, but it's literally just one slice into square shield. It's also very important to know all the three slicers from different angles. For example, here's scallop kite. You want to know it from the back as well. So for the back, it'll be like this. You also want to know them upside down. So upside down scallop kite will be like this. Again, here's another one from the back, pon pon. And something like shield square. Yeah. I think the easiest way to do this is just to know the fist fist alg from multiple angles. So from here, like this. From here, it's like this. And stuff like that. And for a case like this, all you have to do is that slice, and then figure out which fist fist you have, and then do that. So another tip is to not do unnecessarily big moves in cube shape. So for example, for this case, what I used to do a lot was I saw this huge piece, and then I'll pair this with it, and then I would do a D2 and then do a scallop kite. Although this is not too bad, there is a D2 in the alg, which is pretty bad. So the way you do this is you manipulate the pieces a bit differently. So for this one, hold this in back like this with both layers, and as you can see, there's no D2, which is pretty bad. Here's another case. What I used to do was something like this, and then bring this over, and then bring that around, scallop kite. But the better way to do this is just this, and you can see it got the scalp kite in the same number of slices, but in terms of the overall movement, it's much lower than before. So here's another really easy trick. For this one, it's to rotate during inspection to find the best angle to solve the cube at. So for example, this one, here the bar is not flipped, so I can start to solve here or here. So depending on the cube state, I'm going to choose which one solves the cube shape better. In my opinion, it'll be here, because I think the finger trick is going to be a bit better. For here, I have to do a D prime, which is a bit ugly. So here, that should be the better position to hold the cube at. In this case, the bar is actually flipped, so this one's a bit different. You can't hold it from the back because that's wrong. So you can either hold it from here, or you can hold it from upside down here. I would prefer to hold it from here because I think the finger tricks are better and it's easier to follow the scalp kite. I'm just more used to putting a scalp on top. So I'll just do it from this angle. This angle is not that great and the finger tricks aren't the best. So I would prefer doing it from here, so yeah. Another tip is to make a Volt MS. So basically what that means is it has a magnetic slice. And so the reason why I recommend this is because it helps with stability of the cube and keeps it stable. But in addition, it's extremely easy to do and it takes not too much time and it has pretty great effects. So if you've never magnetized a cube before or you don't have too many magnets, this is a perfect mod to do. So what you have to do is take apart the intersection, put magnets on the sides, and that's pretty much it. You don't even need this many magnets. I just put a bit extra to make it stronger. In theory, you just need 1, 2, 3. That's all you need. So here's a tip for people who have relatively loose puzzles or they have a puzzle that is easily turned during inspection. So obviously you don't want a DNF, so what you can do is take advantage of the card that you get. So during inspection, keep the card in the puzzle and don't take it out and inspect. At the end of the inspection, then you can take it out and it's already solved. If you take out the card early, you have a chance of turning the puzzle during inspection by accident, especially if it's a loose puzzle. So here's a pretty cool trick for timer starts in competition. So especially when your first move is going to be a slice, what you can do is you can take the puzzle and put it on the table like this. If you put it on the table like this, it's going to allow for better access for the top and bottom layers. But for this, it'll allow better access for the slice layer. This trick might not be for everyone, but it's good to know that you can start the timer with the puzzle like this. And there you go. This trick is pretty helpful for people who slip the cube a lot, or have a cube with a smaller inner layer, which makes gripping the puzzle a bit harder. So a pretty simple fix is just to use Cube Shop's Gravity Grip. So all you need is 2 drops of this, one on your left thumb and one on your left middle finger. So not that much, just a small drop like that. That's pretty much all you need, and spread it around a little bit. So pretty much this is liquid chalk and it will just help the friction increase between your hands and the cube, just a little bit. So it's been about 30 seconds, maybe even less, and just wipe off any extra chalk that can be on your finger, and that's pretty much it. The grip is not insanely better, but it's that tiny bit better that might help you prevent one more slip. When I move my left hand and my right hand on the cube, I can definitely feel some more friction on the left hand. So that's definitely going to help the sturdiness of the puzzle and preventing any cube drops. This method may not work perfectly well for everyone, but if you have this product, you may as well just give it a try. Here's a really easy way to switch the colors of the top and the bottom layers. So for example, maybe you got the cube in this orientation and you prefer to have yellow on top and white on bottom. So instead of peeling off all the stickers, you can go ahead and just do this. Slice, U2D2 slice. So that alone switches the layers, but you get this problem with the sides. So all I have to do is switch out the caps. So take off this cap, take off this cap, and then switch them around. And there you go, you just switch the colors to top and bottom in just a few seconds. Here's a pretty cool trick for people who use the bolt and added the lock nut. If you do this modification to the cube, it does help with stripping, but unfortunately if you tighten or loosen the cube, the lock nut comes with it, which is annoying. So to fix this issue, just use GAN GS nut tool. So what we want to do is just use the tool to hold the nut in place. And now you can see that tightening and loosening the cube is much easier using this tool. So this trick helps with doing this EO case for multiple angles. So my normal out for this is just to do edge like this and cancel into M2. But if you know edge from multiple angles, you can actually solve cases like this. Same EO case, but from a different angle, from the back, using a different edge case, and canceling that into the M2. So maybe after EO, you would get this case with the edges in the back for this EO. So instead of doing a U2D2, which could take some time, you can just go ahead and do this, and that can be a bit faster. So if you know how the M2 works, you can actually use the influence PBL. So the M2 is pretty simple. You're just getting this edge here, this edge here, this edge here, this edge here. So knowing that information, you can actually influence PBL. So here I can either do a U prime M2 or U M2. And now if I take a look at the bottom layer, it's going to be orange, it's going to be moving back, and green will be moving front. So if I go ahead and do a U prime, these will move up. I'll have a green bar, which is pretty nice. But if I did U, orange would go here, green would go here, no blocks at all. As you can see, it's pretty ugly PBL. But if I just saw that this block would be made, I would actually get a much easier PBL. It's usually much easier to look at the top for the blocks. So over here, I see the green here. That can make this green block, so I would just do U, M2. So usually looking at the top to form the blocks on the bottom is much easier to look ahead for. So this trick helps a lot with PO prediction. So pretty much all the EO algs, if you're using the right ones of course, will preserve this left block. So knowing this is really helpful because during the EO alg you can actually look at this left part of the cube and you know what's going to be there and it's going to be preserved. For example, for this case, I see it solved, so I know that after I do the EO alg, it will be solved. So knowing this, it will lower the amount of PLLs that are possible for the bottom layer. So for this one, there's not that many PLLs left that it could be. For example, it could be maybe F, J, but I know for sure it can't be something like G or R because they don't have this big block. So yeah. And as you can see, it was completely preserved. This trick's not only useful when it's solved, it's also useful for some other patterns that you might see. So this one, corner, edge, they're all opposites. So for this case, you might predict that the bottom could be a G perm because that one has opposites here. And you can know that this is not like anything like a J perm or like an R perm, something like that, because it has this pattern here. And as you can see, it's a G perm. So knowing this, you can also influence the PBLs that you get. For example, this case, I know again, if I put the block on the left, I get everything preserved here. So if I get this EO case, I would actually, instead of doing a D, which breaks up this block and preserves this, which is not the greatest, I would do this to preserve this block. And blocks are usually better for PBL. And as you can see, that's preserved. So here's a pretty nice trick that makes a pretty nasty PBL much easier. So for this case, a lot of people would just see the blocks, preserve them, JJ, and then not pay attention and get op edge, which is not good. So instead what you want to do is notice that you have this case, and you can actually, before you do the JJ alg, do the edge first. Switch these edges and these edges, and just go straight to JJ. So if you do this, you avoid the op edge, which is a pretty bad alg, and you turn into edge, which is a much better alg. This trick can also be applied here. So for this one, as you can see, it's gonna lead to a pretty bad case. If I do the corners, preserving the blocks and all, I'm gonna get op edge, which is not good. But if I notice, if I first do the M2 to M2 to solve this, then I would just get plain JN, which is a much better case. So this is the P perm, and it's pretty much a big block here and another big block here. You can kind of think of it like an F perm and an A perm combined. And the cool thing about this case is that you can actually turn it to edge or op depending on how you align it. So if you go ahead and align it like this, where you're separating the op pieces, you get edge every single time. But if you do this and you have the op pieces preserved like this, then you get the op swap every single time. So knowing this information, you can actually avoid any op edges. So for this one, on top, I already know this is going to be preserved if I do JJ, so I'm going to get op on top. So the bottom, I want op as well, so I'm going to misalign this so I can preserve this op pair, JJ, and get op op. And again, if I did not do that, I would get edge, and then I would get op edge, which is not really that good. You can actually apply the same concept with the C-perm. So this is a C-perm, it's basically edge corner swap with no blocks. So for this one, you might notice that there are some opposite pairs here. So if you go ahead and do JJ preserving these pairs, you get W, W. But if you do not preserve these pairs, you get an open. So again, you can use this to force better PBLs. So the general rule is W goes better with edge and O goes better with op. So for this one, I can do JJ to solve the corners. On the bottom, I want to misalign it to preserve the blocks. I'm going to get edge on the bottom. So on top, I want to prefer to get W. So I'm going to preserve these opposites, and I can get a better PBL. If I didn't preserve these blocks, I would get edge O, which is a bit worse. So here's another example, but for this one, I know I'm going to get op and bottom because of this opposite in the back. So for this one, I'm going to actually prefer to get the O instead of the W. So I'm going to misalign this to make sure I break up this pair so I can get an O-perm, and the bottom is already op. And yeah, it's a much easier PBL. If you use op O before you do CP, it makes some PBLs easier. This is a clear example, something like this. So if you go ahead and do CP first, you end up with edge O, which is not that great. But if you do EP first, which is O op, you end up with a single J-perm, which is better. These two examples might not be as obvious, but you can still use op O to solve them. So for this one, again, you have B-perm, which means you can do an op first. And for the bottom, there's C-perm, which is a no block case. So to turn this into J, all I have to do is do an O-perm to it. So op O, and then you turn CB to JJ, which is pretty nice. So here's the last one. Here's one that a lot of people just hate because if you notice, it's a B and a D, and if you do JJ, you get op edge, which is bad. And if you try to do something like edge edge before that, you can't because it's still an op edge. So there's nothing you can do to avoid op edge in this case, but with this trick you can. Go ahead and do op O, and then you get JJ, which is much better than op edge. So when you start doing more PBL, it's important to recognize these cases. So this is X and this is Q. To a regular Q pair, this might look exactly the same because most people just do NN to O-perm. But if you're using PBL, it's important to recognize them. So this is how I do it. So on the X-perm, there's a bunch of pseudo blocks, which is pretty much, if you like flip these two colors, it forms a block. So as you can see, there's like pseudo blocks all over the puzzle. For Q, if you flip them, there's no pseudo blocks. So Q is the one with no pseudo blocks, X is the one with pseudo blocks. So here's a very simple PBL that a lot of people actually don't even know. So it's PN PN, and most people just go like NN and then op op. But you can actually put these together and make a one PBL with 3 slices only, and basically just like this. So it's basically an NN that's modified a bit. If you know the PN alg, it actually makes some PBLs much easier. So here's VY for this one. If you notice that if you switch these two from the V and these two from the Y, you would just get PN. So using this information, you can actually solve any combination of Y perms or V perms using edge and getting PN. Here's another really simple PBL that a lot of people don't know. PJ. Most people just go like JJ edge. but if you modify the JJ alg a bit, it solves this case. So it'll be like this. So PJPJ can also solve a lot of nice PBLs such as FT. So for this one, go ahead and do PJPJ, and then I'm left with op-op. So if you get any combination of any F perms or T perms, go ahead and do PJPJ and then op-op, and that solves it. This alg also helps with solving other PBLs such as any combination of R perms or J perms. So it's the same concept here, just do PJPJ and then left with edge. So any combination of J perms or R perms, just go ahead and do the alg and then edge. So here's another application of PJPJ. So E perm on top, A perm on bottom. So E perm you already know is swap of 2 corners and 2 corners. A perm is swap of 3 corners, which is the same thing as 2 swap and another 2 swap. So you can use the PJPJ alg here. So swap these 2 and these 2, and then left with that. So pretty much any combination of E perms, A perms, or solved layers, you can just go ahead and use this alg twice and you can solve it. So if you use PJPJ from the back, you can actually solve E perm cases a lot quicker. For example, E perm on top and bottom, I can do PJPJ here and then PJPJ in the back. So if I do this with the PJPJ with the back, I don't need to do that U2 in between the algs. So the alg will be something like this. And if I want to be fancy, I can cancel to the PJPJ in the back. Here's a pretty cool trick for doing the E perm on one layer. It could be the top or the bottom. So instead of doing PJPJ and then another PJPJ from a U2 angle, I can go ahead and just do this. Slice, set them up both in front, PJPJ, and then undo the setup. So again, like this. Here's an interesting way to solve these 3 PBLs with PJPJ. So all of these have edge in them, and then on top is something like a bunch of blocks and a bunch of not blocks. So something like this. Normally you would do something like edge, and then edge. But with this method, all you have to do is convert them into JJ. So PJPJ here, PJPJ here. So preserve these blocks and do PJPJ. And as you can see, I get JJ. It's much better. Here's another example. I got P edge, so not the best case normally, but PJ, and get JJ. So lastly, in this case, D edge. So I can go ahead and do this, PJ, and then JJ. So it's a pretty nice PBL that can solve some not that great PBLs. So out of all the easy PBLs, I think this is the nicest, just the FV. For this one, it's just a modification of the JN alg, so something like this. So we're kind of going back and forth with the top and bottom layer. So again. So here's a pretty nice application of the VF alg, I think. So for this one, it's just RU, just not the greatest case usually. For this one, just hold the R with the headlights in front and preserve this block. For forcing the U perm into an F perm, hold the block in the back, and you might remember from the UH alg that if you hold the U perm in a way, it forces J. Just do the opposite of that to force F. So go ahead and do JJ from this angle, and then I get pretty nice FV. So using the previous PBL algs, you can actually solve some pretty bad cases much better. So for example, in this case, there's no blocks at all and it's pretty garbage. So if I do JN here, I would have no blocks, but if I do FV, I get a bit of a better PBL case. Here's another pretty simple example. Just CC, and with JJ I would get no blocks, but if I do PJ, I actually get a double good U perm. So yeah, it's a much better case. So during PBL, cancellations actually make algs a bit quicker. So for example, this one's KK, and normally just JJ, Aj. But what you might notice after doing the alg is that the Aj is already set up. So for this case, I would just do JJ. Instead of doing the last move, just cancel into the Aj. So get into like this. Here's another one that's pretty nice. I have an Aj here. I can use Aj here to get some J. So, Aj. But I know I'm going to go into a J perm, so I can just go straight into the AUG to solve that PBL. So these cancellations and other AUGs actually produces some pretty nice PBLs. For this one, YY, you already know we can do Aj into PN. But if you cancel it, it makes a 5 slice PBL. So, cancel. This one, RR, you might already know you can do PJ to Aj, but you can cancel it like this. Cancel into the Aj. Here's another one, MM, pretty bad case normally, but do PJ, cancel into the double H firm. Cancel into double H. And solves MM. If you throw in a random PJ in your AUG, it does sometimes make some pretty nice PBLs. For example, this one. Pretty bad PBL usually, but I can do op, kind of. And right in the middle, PJ with these corners. Finish it off, and that solves that PBL. This one, I can do NN. Right before I finish, do a random PJ to solve these corners, and then finish it off. Here's the last one, also not a great PBL. I could do PN, do a PJ in the middle, and then finish it off, and it solves that PBL. If you throw in a random M2 into some regular AUGs, it actually solves some pretty nice PBLs. So for this one, SS, let's do NN. Right here, M2 just like with these edges. Finish it off, and that solves that PBL. PP, JJ. I can do an M2 here just like with these edges. And then finish it off. This one, I can do JN. But right here I can do an M2 to cycle those edges, and then finish it off, and that solves it. Figuring out these AUGs is pretty simple. Just do a random AUG with opposite alignment of layers, something like maybe JJ. And somewhere in the AUG, just do an M2 that cycles edges without disturbing anything. And then continue with the AUG. And you probably get something interesting. Another trick is to influence CO during CS. So this works especially well with cases with symmetrical parts, such as something like square. In cases like these, I can move the square of the kite square before I do the AUG to influence the CO after I do the CS AUG. So for this case, I would prefer to keep the black on the left and the white on the right, because first off, that will be easier to predict CO because I know what's on the left side. Second of all, I use black bottom and white top, so if I do this orientation and I know this is 2gen and won't affect this, I can get a chance of a CO skip, which I get. Here's another example. This one might not be as obvious. For this one, it's one of those start cases, and for this one, I know that I get a CO skip if I have this orientation of the pieces. So that's just from knowledge from previous cases, and I know if I do this, I will not get a CO skip. So if I get a scramble like this, I can purposely misalign the star just to make sure I get a CO skip. So it's pretty important to also know multiple ways of doing a CO. For example, for this case, if you only know one way to do a CO, then maybe you'll do this, U2, D2, insert, which is pretty slow. So you can do something like this to insert that corner and not do any U2s or D2s. Here's another example. For this case, you might do something like D2U, this, and then this, which is pretty long. So a better way to do this seal is maybe you can do something like this, and it saves a bit of moves. So here's another one. You can possibly do D2 and then insert, which is not the worst, but maybe something that can be better is UD and insert like this. So it's pretty useful to know multiple ways to insert a corner for CO so we can avoid U2s and D2s. Another trick is to preserve blocks during CO. So for example, for this case, I can go ahead for this here. I can do a few things actually. I can do this, CO like that. But if I notice that there's a block here, and I got a block here, I can try to preserve the top layer. I can go ahead and do CO like this, which preserves a lot of the top layer, which might make it easier to look ahead and might give me a better PPL. Instead of preserving blocks, you can also preserve something like corners. For example, for this case, I can notice, yeah, I can insert this corner like this to solve CO. But a better way to solve this is to go ahead and recognize that these corners are solved, these are solved, so I can preserve these two. Go ahead and insert this corner, and I get a CP skip. So if you can recognize stuff like that during CO, you can actually skip CP sometimes. So sometimes it can be a bit difficult to track corners during CS to figure out CO, but instead what we can do is just track the last two corners. So I'll give you an example. For this case, to predict CO, I can just go ahead and do the case. I can see the last two corners here. So knowing these two are black, these two have to be white. So I can just go straight into CO. Here's another case I can predict CO on, so I'll just do the alg. And from the last slice, I can notice the white pieces here, so I can go straight into CO without looking at the bottom. So this trick does not work all the time. For example, for this case, if I do the alg, notice this one's white, and these two are white. I don't know where the last white piece is, so it could be either here or here. So even though it doesn't work all the time, when it does happen, you should take advantage of it to avoid that pause. This trick can also be applied to predicting EO during CO. So I'm doing CO right now. I can notice that there's a one white piece here. So using that information, I can go straight into the EO alg. So here's another pretty easy example. So I'm doing CO. Right before EO, I noticed these two white pieces. So I can go straight into EO without looking at the bottom. Again, of course, this trick does not work all the time. For example, the CO. Yeah, I see these two white pieces, but I don't know where the other one is for this EO, so I have to look at the bottom to figure it out, and then I can do the EO. So a way you can solve bad EPs is by canceling some M2s. So for this one, ZH, so I can do H first on top, and cancel into the Z on bottom. So H first. Don't do the last M2. Instead of doing that, just go ahead and cancel into the M2 of the Z perm on bottom. So again, H perm. Don't do the last one. Go into the Z perm. Here's another case. This one's a bit less intuitive. It's two O perms, but if I do op O, then I would get Z on top, and I'll cancel into that Z perm. So op O for the bottom. Don't do the last M2. Instead, I'll just cancel straight into the Z perm. So again, what I'm doing is op O and then Z perm. But I'm canceling the M2 from the op O and the Z perm, so it looks something like this. So that's op O, cancel in to the Z perm. A common mistake I see during EP is that people treat EP as two separate steps. One subset is to solve one layer, another is to solve the other layer. While this kind of works, it's better to treat EP as one smooth step, and that's just to solve the whole EP. So in general, the best way to do this is to do edge into double good U-perm. So for this case, most people do something like O op and then U-perm, but the better way to do this case is to do edge into double good U-perm. Here's another I see done wrong quite a bit. Most people do op into U-perm, but better way to do this is something like this: edge into double good U-perm. which is much better. Here's another one I see done wrong a lot. So most people do something like edge into U-perm, which is not that great. So what's better is edge into double good U-perm, which saves a few slices. Another useful trick is to be able to do an elk from this angle and this angle. This allows for flexibility and can lower regrips. So for example, edge from the back, I could do it like this. So that's starting with my thumb on the bottom, or I can go like this with my thumb on top. So it's a pretty simple PBL. It's just JJ into edge. So if I start like this, to make it regripless, I should probably use the edge with my thumb and bottom. So it looks something like this. So here's another pretty simple PBL. This one's JN and edge. So JN. And for this one, I'll prefer to use the edge with my thumb on top. So with regripless. So again, something like this. And that's a lot more smooth than something like this. From the UH alg, you might remember that you can solve H perms with 2 N perms. So something like this. So using that information, you can actually solve some pretty nice PBLs. So for example, JH, pretty ugly PBL, but knowing that you can solve H perm with 2 N perms, you can go ahead and just do NN from here. So the N perm on top will just change the top into another J perm. The bottom turns into another N perm. And from here, just do JN. Here's another way you can do this. So NH, pretty bad PBL usually, but I could do JN. And that turns the H perm into an N perm, and turns this into a J perm. And I can just do it again, JN. And that solves the whole PBL. Another pretty cool case is this one, this G perm. So if the back with the headlights is not opposite, and the block is next to the headlights, not across from it, then if you preserve this block and do N perm on it, it gives you J perm. So here's a pretty cool example for this one, and it uses the H perm trick as well. So N perm here gives J perm, N perm here gives N perm, so N, and then you get JN. So that makes a pretty bad PBL case much easier. So here's another PBL, so it's just J, G, and this is the G perm that can be solved with an N and then J. So for this one, I can go ahead and just do N perm here to turn this into a J perm and turn this into a J perm. And then I get JJ. Which makes that case a bit easier. For PBL, you should try to always make your PBL contain the least possible number of slices as possible while not having a bar flip at the end. So here's an example for this one. There's JA. So for the 2CP PBL method, you can do JJ into JJ, but unfortunately if you do that, you have to do a bar flip at the end. So what I'll do here is actually JJ from here, and then JN. And if I do that, there's no bar flip. So pretty much what that does is it forces JN, and that makes it 1 extra slice, so it avoids the bar flip. So that's pretty much what you want. Well, usually you should preserve all the blocks during CP to make your EP better. Sometimes you can predict that preserving the blocks actually makes your EP worse. So for example, in this case, JA, if I preserve all the blocks, I get a single U perm, and that is not that great. But if you notice, if I misalign these blocks and actually break up the blocks on the J perm, I get a better EP, which is double good U perm. So sometimes you should break up the blocks, and it does give you a better EP. So if you know that preserving a block will give you something bad, such as a single U perm, it's better sometimes to misalign the blocks to give you something better, such as a double U perm. This next trick is for blind tracing for CSP. So for most people, scallop, this will be their reference scheme. So a trick to make your blind tracing a bit faster is to have multiple reference schemes. So here is an example of 2 of them. So this one looks pretty similar, but these 2 edges are swapped on both layers. And if you trace this, it's going to give you the same result as this. Same in this case, as you can see, these 2 edges are swapped. But again, if you trace this, it's traced the exact same as that. These are not the only 2 reference schemes that you can make. There's like a ton of reference schemes you can make. So we can like switch these two, these, you can switch like a bunch of random pieces. As long as you do the same thing on the top layer and the bottom layer, it's perfectly fine, and it gives the same exact parity count. So for cases like these and like a few other cases, you can actually just, instead of just tracing to the reference scheme, you can go ahead and trace to any scheme that you made up that is symmetrical on the top and bottom layer. So here's a quick example. So let's do the edges first. So these are symmetrical, that's fine. These are not, these are not, these are not. So what I can do is I can swap these two. So that's 1. Swap these two, that's 2. Swap these two, that's 3. And it makes everything symmetrical. And as you notice, it's only 3 swaps to make everything symmetrical for the edges, which is much faster than regular blind tracing. Alright, now for the corners, these two are the same, that's fine. These two are not. These are not, these are not. So I can go ahead and swap this and this to make everything white on top and everything yellow on bottom. So that's 1 swap, or 4 swaps including the edges. I could do one more swap here to make the red and blue here to make this symmetrical, and one more swap here to make this symmetrical. So that's 2 more swaps. As you can see, that's much easier than blind tracing, just make everything symmetrical. And also gives the same exact parity count, so it can make your tracing a bit faster and it gives the same result. Here's a tracing tip that works for both blind tracing and KL CSP tracing. So the trick is to not count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but instead count binary, so something like 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, or even odd, even odd, even odd. The reason I do this is because there's less numbers and it's just much easier to keep track of 2 numbers or 2 states, even or odd. It also makes it easier to count if you're using your hand to count, so for even it can be like this, odd it can be like this, and I can just keep crossing it and crossing my fingers, and I can trace the parity of the cube. And I'll need to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and get a bit lost there. This style of counting might not be the best for blind tracing because the number actually means something when you're counting. So in blind tracing, the number shows like how far along you are in blind tracing. While in KLCSP, like it doesn't really mean too much, the number. So here's a quick example trace, so I'll just do it right now. So first white edges, that's parity, not parity, not parity, not parity, parity, uncross, not parity, so it's no parity, or even parity. So yeah, counting binary, and there you go, there's no parity. So here's a really cool trick that can help avoid looking towards the back or hidden spots for KLCSP tracing. So for this one, as you can see for the white edges, I have to look here, and look here. So instead of using the first, second, and third edge, you can actually use the first, second, and fourth edge. So orange, green, red, that gives parity. But all you have to do if you're using the first, second, and fourth edge is just negate it. So I got parity, so it's no parity. Here's our example of barrel. So if I look in the back, here's the white edge, but it's not that easy to find. I need to rotate my hand. So what I can do is look at the first, second, and fourth edge instead of the first, second, and third. So I can see up the third one, get blue, red, green, so that's parity, negate it, that's not parity. Simple as that, and I don't have to look at this last edge. So this CSP case is pretty easy for no parity, just go ahead and do it through slices. But for odd parity, a lot of people have trouble with this one because it's quite a pain to do this, pawn, and switch the layers and then solve it. A lot of people think that Fingertrick's not that friendly, so this one might be a bit better for some people. So basically what you're doing is turning this into kite shield, and then doing a D2, turning it back into square shield, and then solving it. Basically what you're doing is converting it to this CSP case, and then doing that CSP case, and then solving it. So the optimal way to do this is something like this, so bring up these two from the L to the top, and then go ahead and bring them here, and then just line these, bring them down, and then you got square shield. So again, bring the L up here, bring it here, misalign the bottom to switch up the kite, which switches to parity, and then square shield. So that might be a better alternative to doing the pawn thing. So a lot of people don't even bother to trace during cases like kite or square just because the alg for parity is not really that great, so they may as well just go ahead and just do the regular solve. If you already predict CO or EO or however far you can predict, and you don't think you can go any further, I would suggest just tracing the square square or kite kite anyway. The reason I would do this is because it's easier to expect what is coming. So if you get parity, you can expect like during PBL to like do some kind of parity PBL, and if you got no parity, then you can expect during PBL to do a no parity PBL. So you're not really tracing the cube to avoid parity, but rather to expect if you're gonna get parity or not, which is pretty useful sometimes. Here's a trick to predict EO if you get something like square square or kite kite. This trick does assume that you're not changing alignment of the layers during CO, so something like this, but rather you're just doing moves that keep both layers in alignment. So what you can do is kind of treat the pieces like a square zero, kind of. So you just glue a corner and an edge together in your mind, of course. So you can go around the cube and glue these pieces together, and you can try to find pieces where the corner and edge are different. So for this pair, these will be the same, obviously because they're both black. This one, there's one black and one white. So these are paired together and have different colors, so we should keep note of these. So that's one of them. Here's another one of them, that's two. This is fine. This is fine, this is fine. Got one here, 3, one here, 4. So all I have to do is divide the pairs with different colors by 2. So add 4 pairs of those different color ones and divide by 2, that's 2. So after I do a seal, it's going to be a 2-2 case. And to know where the 2's go, all I have to do is track these 4 pieces. So just this section, this section, this section, this section. So it's much easier than just tracking all the pieces. All I have to do is track these ones and keep track of them. So by tracking the pieces, I know this will be here, this will be here, this section will be here, and this section will be up here. So I can figure out that it's going to be a left to right case here and an L case here. So as you can see, that's what I predicted using that trick. Here's a really useful tip for the KLCSP tracing method. So for all these shapes, it's traced exact same from any angle. So for kite, same here, same here, same here, same here, same here. No matter where you start tracing, it's the same. Same with this one. For the L, trace from any angle, it's traced exact same. Same for the attached pair, and same for parallel. So you don't have to actually trace from whatever your reference trace is. You can just trace from anywhere and it will give the same result for these shapes. So here's another really simple trick. So for every case with 6 edges on top and with pairs of 2, trace the same from any angle that keeps them in 2's. So for here, trace the same from any angle. Here again, trace the same from any angle. This one's traced the same from any angle except for one of them, which is, or 2 of them, one of them being this one and one of them being this one because they break up the 2's, but trace the same from any angle with only 2's preserved. Here are a few more cases that are really easy to trace from different angles. So for the pawn, it's traced the same from any angle except for one, that being the one with the one in the back and the 3 in the left, or the one in the back, 3 in the right. So trace the same from anywhere except for here to here. This one's traced the same from anywhere except for here to here. For the fifth, it traces the same from anywhere except for the one that divides the 2 and the edge. So this is different, but anywhere else it's the exact same trace. Same for this one. This is different because it divides the pair and the edge. This is different because it divides the pair and the edge. So starting from here or here is different, but everywhere else it gives the same exact count. So usually the pawn and the fifth cases are a bit annoying to trace, but with this tip it makes it much easier. So the final tip is to use SquadMate. SquadMate's a really useful website that trains CSP. So first is the color trainer for the KLCSP method. Especially if you're having a hard time getting your time under 15 seconds for inspection, this helps a lot with training color recognition. There's also an algorithm trainer that works for both blind tracing and KLCSP tracing. Basically, you can select as many cases as you want, and it'll give you random scrambles for those cases. This is pretty helpful when you want to practice specific cases. For example, maybe just learn a new case, or maybe having trouble with another case. All I have to do is select those cases and the website generates these scrambles for you to drill. If you want to practice timing as well, there is an inspection timer on the website included as well. So that's it for these tricks. Hopefully at least a few of these were useful to you guys. So I tried to give as many tips as possible for Square One in this video, but obviously I couldn't include everything. If you're still interested, I do have other tutorials on my channel, such as one for CSP, PBL, and finger tricking on Square One. So if you want to check them out, they will be in the description. So that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching.